Hello, and welcome to the last day of Ready Summit. I'm very, very excited that the past few days have been so impactful, not only for me myself, but we've got extremely interesting feedback from the people viewing us, both in the communities as well as institutions, governments. So we really managed to start up a very interesting conversation around the role of Roma in different fields. We've really looked at how has the past pandemic affected the Roma communities in Macedonia, in Serbia, in Romania, in Bulgaria. So we've had very good presence from both governments, NGOs, companies, and we've tried to kind of understand not only what has happened so far and what was our response, but what we should do from now on. And I think it's a matter of starting and continuing this conversation in 2021. So I'm super excited to kick off the last session of the Ready Summit, which has a very, very interesting subject. So the subject is, what does digital revolution, the current digital revolution, mean for us? Is that a threat or is that an opportunity? How are we going to use and maybe capitalize some of these accelerating trends, which we see in both automation, artificial intelligence, all of the hardware and software that is now being developed, which enables us to spend much less time working and more time doing other things that we like. But is that really going to be the case for everybody in the society? So I'm very excited to present you our panel. We have together with us Andrei Roth from UIPath, which is a very, very interesting and very innovative company, which is really changing the way we are going to work in the office. Andy, welcome, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Yeah, I think this is a much better viewing thing. So Andy, welcome for the last day of Ready Summit. You're muted, Andy.
A second.
Excellent. We can hear you now.
Oh, it mutes me when I minimize the window. Weird. Never mind. So thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Andrei Roth. I work with UIPath. Company started out of Romania, but that's now a global company working on software automation. I look forward to talking about, pretty much how technology can help, make people's lives actually better, but also help them to have a different life. But we'll get there.
Very good. Thank you very much, Andy. Also together with us, we have Zenebe Uragachi, who works for Helvetas, a leading development institution based in Switzerland. Zenebe, I'm very glad you accepted our invitation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Zenebe Uragachi. I'm based in Switzerland. I work, as Petrica said, for the largest development organization. Just to share our experiences in Eastern Europe region, including also the Western Balkans, that we work in inclusive economic development. So looking forward to the exchange and discussions.
Thank you, Zenebe. And then also from Helvetas, we have Sabin Selimi, who's very much working and trying to be at the forefront of digital tools used for migrants and vulnerable communities. Sabin, very glad to have you here.
Hi, I'm Sabin. So I'm communication manager at the regional program Reconomy, working with Zenebe Uragachi. So the program of the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, implemented by Helvetas in 12 countries in Eastern Europe, Western Balkans, and South Caucasus. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sabin. And last but not least, a good friend of mine and one of the leading Roma entrepreneurs that I have met in the past several years, Ferki Demirovski from Skopje. Ferki is the CEO of actually many companies, but I'll allow maybe Ferki to mention a bit and introduce himself. You're on mute, Ferki.
Sorry. Thank you for this presentation, and I'm glad to meet you, everybody. Thank you, Petrica, for inviting me to this meeting. My name is Ferki Demirovski. I'm coming from Skopje. Our main company is called Quantum Solutions. It's based in Hong Kong. Our main objective is to, of course, develop programs and softwares that will improve people's lives. Our main markets for now are the Asian countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand. Now we're starting to open some communication channels to enter in Africa. We're developing programs. Now we started to develop hardware for parking automatization and also city parking organization. We are also having a production of smartphone phones that are selling in some Asian countries. But I'm here to discuss more about the idea how we can improve lives and how can we actually find our place in this new developments of after this COVID situation.
Thank you so much, Ferki. So I think today's conversation is going to be around how do we actually comment on 2020? How was 2020 for you personally, for the company, and for your customers? And I would first maybe give the floor to Andy to tell me how. I mean, you guys are working and you're already very advanced in terms of digital tools. I think you're probably one of the companies that are benefiting from this, right, Andy?
Thank you. So yeah, 2020, I don't think anybody can say it's been an easy year, right? Because so many things have changed, from, the economic landscape overall, but also the way we work. So we individually had to adapt. As companies, we had to adapt. Now, you're right. UIPath is one of the beneficiaries, and why? Because this social distancing, this everything remote, this was a giant leap in digitalization worldwide because we had to, right? It was I'll put it as a white swan because it has a positive impact, but no, it is a black swan for digitalization. I'm looking at Romania. Romania, within half a year, made some leaps in digitalization it hasn't done in years, in decades, because we had to. We had no choice as society. So yeah, as a company providing solutions for digitalization, UiPath has seen an increase in activity and an increase in demand in what we do. What we do? We provide solutions for software automation. Petrica was saying we build software robots. That means the focus and the industry we work in is called RPA, robotic process automation. The point of this technology is to automate things people do that are repetitive, not by writing a lot of code behind it to, with the custom software, but rather actually replicating what actual humans do. This is a very significant leap in terms of how the implementation, how fast it happens, and also the requirements of working with backend systems. So it's a way of making people's work a lot simpler. Now for 2020, from the cases that we had before, which were a lot obviously in the backend systems for financial institutions, a lot of back office processing, it went a lot closer to the regular individual. And I think this also might have some impact on what we're talking about the communities. Interesting cases we've seen, and we've even just highlighted these showcases, healthcare workers. In the US, for example, a lot of the public administration and the healthcare system adopted this technology because what does it do? It allows, for example, healthcare workers, frontline workers, nurses, assistants, to actually no longer have to fill in the paperwork when they actually intake a patient. They actually have a robot that does this. This actually allowed them to go from spending 3 or 4 hours a day on bureaucracy to actually have 5-10 minutes on that, and the rest actually focus, because the robots would actually fill in all the paperwork, submit all the documents. That's something that's very, very tangible and with an immediate impact. All right, it's about allowing a healthcare worker to focus on their core job, which is supporting people's health rather than supporting the insurers' the documentation needs.
So you see
On the
enabler rather than
sorry.
So you see this as an enabler rather than as a threat.
I'm sorry, I didn't. It was interrupted for a second. I didn't understand.
So you see this as an enabler rather than as a threat.
It's an what? The 2020?
Yeah.
Oh, it is an enabler, and it's an enabler. It's a catalyzer, I'd say, because, and okay, healthcare is one point, but I'm looking, for example, and I've had this discussion with several NGOs we work with. Is like I know there's actually workers who are actually dealing with disadvantaged communities, and many times they actually told me they spend 80% of their time actually on filling paperwork to support these people, and 20% actually working with them. Right? We can shift that. This kind of technologies, and whether it's RPA or it's even like mechanical robots in some cases can even help. You can actually shift that, so you can actually allow people to focus on their core business. I would say even that is the overall mantra of automation. It allows people to focus on the core business, what they do, whether it's helping the sick or the needy, or whether it's actually as an accountant helping companies manage their finances rather than filling paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? That's really important. And I think 2020 will be a year when we're, as a society, we're moving away from being robots ourselves.
Right. Thank you, Andy, for this great stuff. I'll pass on the ball to Zenebe. So Zenebe, how did you see this from your perspective? How was 2020?
Thank you, Petrica. Yeah, everybody knows that it has been a year full of just upside downs. As much as the COVID pandemic has been a tragedy, it has also been a strong driver of creativity and innovation. What we call in Helvetas accelerated disruption, particularly accelerating digitalization, reminding also all of us that mobility has been made very easy. People have been traveling, interacting, exchanging information, goods and services, and the pandemic really disrupted that and changed a little bit the patterns. It has not been an equalizer. People were saying that it affects everyone. No, it affected people who were vulnerable, people who were marginalized, people who were excluded very much, people who live in the rural areas, people who had unstable income. They were highly affected. Secondly, when we say also digitalization, not everybody has an access to digital infrastructure. Knowledge is not a click away for some people. As much as it's also a source of innovation and creativity, as I said, governments are using the pandemic as a reason, for increased surveillance, the shrinking of spaces. We know that. So it has been a little bit a mixed baggage for our work, but also the impact that it has had on people's lives. I can provide positive sources of creativity and innovation in some of the countries where we are active. If you take the Western Balkan countries like Bosnia, Albania, they have benefited from, for example, from this business process outsourcing. Countries like India, the Philippines, who were giants of the business process outsourcing, they were affected. Workers could not work from home. They could not commute because of the lockdown. And clients like in Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, they moved their outsourcing to nearshoring. That is bringing their businesses to countries like Albania, Bosnia, and Kosovo. So these countries are now benefiting because you have a large number of young people who can also speak German and then other languages. They can also work from home because of long-term investment in digitalization, and then work from home is also becoming one of the strategies of private sector enterprises. So if you look at the positive angle of the pandemic for creativity, innovation, and business opportunities, you can see it. Another example is also from Moldova. If you happen to be in Chisinau, there was this big market at the center of Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, where farmers used to bring their goods and they used to sell every week. And now, because of the pandemic, they cannot. Now that gives some entrepreneurs the idea to establish e-commerce using leveraging existing infrastructure, and then enabling farmers also to sell their products online. We have an initiative called Opt-in in Moldova that is supporting private sector enterprises to use the crisis as a leverage. So just to summarize and then answer your question, Petrica, it has been a mixed baggage between tragedy affecting, exacerbating, vulnerability, accelerating digitalization. My colleague Sabin will talk about artificial intelligence. People may think that artificial intelligence doesn't have anything to do with vulnerable communities, but it does because of biases and exclusions. But I mean, the pandemic also offers, as I said, some sources of creativity and innovation. The examples that I give from online marketing, digitalization in terms of the BPO sector. So let me stop there, and later probably I can add more examples and key conclusions.
Thank you very much, Zenebe. I think this is very, very interesting, and I think looking at the positive aspects of COVID, which more or less accelerated, as you rightly said, the transition towards using more digital tools, I think it's an important aspect. What I would want to maybe do now is go a bit towards Ferki. Ferki is active in quite on a global market, and I would want to see how did you actually feel? How was your business impacted by COVID, and how do you actually plan to better position yourself in 2021?
Well, as all the previous colleagues told, that this was a tragedy because a lot of families were affected, especially the ones that had little impact to technology, or the technology was there but they were not using it. So, as I told you, my target countries were countries that the technology was there but people were not using it very often, which is also similar into Balkans. So the negative we all know, but we have to be some positive people and discuss about what are the good sides of this lockdown. I believe that people only change where they are under pressure and they need to change. So this made us realize that we have tools that are in our hands, but we were barely using them. Like, for example, in all the communication that I've had with people, least people were using e-banking before the COVID than now. Least people were ordering online before than now. People were using cash more before than now, because now everybody tend to use cards. Even people who are, for example, older than 50, 60 that had never had the chance to use cards, that were waiting in front of the banks to take their money for pension funds and salary. They are not doing that now before, because they know that either it's crowded or there is a risk to get infected. So they started using tools that were available on the market, but people were saying, no, I better go to the bank.
Because it was right.
So the positive side of this is that made people realize that maybe we should use technology more for better, to improve our lives and to save us from exposure to the crisis. And I believe that even after this, people will get used to this easier approach to pay your bills from your phone, not to go to pay your bills in the bank, to order something home that will actually impact several economies. If you order online, you are actually benefiting to the market, you are benefiting to the seller who has created the shop, and you are benefiting to the deliverer that is delivering you food. So you are actually helping a range of economy to get improved.
Right.
So I believe that these tools can make people live better and more qualitative.
Right. Thank you, Ferki. So we discussed a bit about what we think kind of makes sense and what is meant for us. And I think all three of you brought in good arguments towards using digital tools, which are available maybe. But I would want to maybe challenge you a bit. I don't think the digital tools have the same accessibility for all of us, right? In terms of availability from a cost perspective, but also from a skills perspective. I know, Andy, you mentioned that the automating the tools that you guys are providing is relatively simple because you don't need to have coding experience. What I would want to spend in the next 10 minutes is focus a bit on how would we actually be able to empower vulnerable communities, vulnerable entrepreneurs, small businesses, people maybe not to the highest educational level, migrants, right? To be able to get into this fast-paced economy. So maybe I give the space to Andy first and then Zenebe. You're on mute, Andy.
Yeah, it's a very valid point that not everybody has the same access, right? I think we have to establish and I think Zenebe mentioned it. There's a first infrastructure layer that you need to have, and that's something that really is up to the government or even the telecom industry to make sure everybody has access to a solid. So sort of you power the utility, and the internet connection has become a utility. It's been, you need to have that. I'm starting from that point. At that point, in disadvantaged communities, there are several ways they can benefit. Like I'll start with UIPath. What UIPath does, for example, right? We have a full academy which is online, and these are online courses that are free for anybody. Anybody can go and they learn, and they can take you from start. Now, obviously, you need to have digital literacy. So we're not. If you don't know how to use a mouse, it's not going to work. If you don't understand how a window works, it's not like a browser window works. That's not going to help you. But once you have that basic operating, you can, and anybody can help. So one of the tenets that we actually have and that we're really striving to push is this idea of democratization of technology, right? Technology in many ways has created this income gap globally, right? Because some people had access to the university, to the education, right? Some people were left out. This kind of technology lowers the barrier to entry. What I hope is that technologies like what we do actually allow a much larger pool of people to get the benefits of the technology, of the technological revolution, the information revolution. That's something we do. So we even have programs. So we have an academy that is actually providing free classes. Anybody can sign up. All you need is an email. And also we have a full community program. So anybody, any individual, or even a small company, we have a threshold of I think 5 million in turnover at 250 people, can actually go take our technology and use it in production to automate their work for free. So we do that. That's because we understand that if you want to have this really become universal, you need to give access. Not anybody can afford an enterprise software. Most people, small companies cannot. We know that. So we've actually taken this as a strategic approach from the early days, from our founders. Now, the other part is actually there are the NGOs that are technology NGOs. I know there's the whole Code 4 franchises. These are NGOs that help with bringing technology into communities or into industries that there isn't, right? These people can also take this technology and help train people, or at least build automations for these people that they can start leveraging, be users of automation rather than creators. That's another part of this. So there are ways that actually companies, and UIPath is not the only one. There's TechSoup, right? TechSoup is an organization, global NGO that actually provides software for NGOs for free or at like a heavily discount. So again, to sort of reduce this gap and this access gap for a lot of people.
Right, but I think it's not only a matter of accessing the software, right? It's actually being able to use them. I don't know if Sabin or Zenebe can actually comment on this.
Yeah, let me first comment. As I said, I mean, many people were saying at the onset, at the start of the pandemic, oh, it's a great equalizer. You know, I was just laughing at it. You know, no, it benefited some, but it excluded also others. So the starting point that I have is it's not a supply demand driven issue. You know, we need to look at what is happening around these the access and then usage of digital tools and devices, and then what is happening around this ecosystem. There you have services like training, financial and business services. Many of the people who are excluded have low or no digital skills. So skills development that is accessible, relevant, and affordable becomes very, very important. So we need to look at the skills component. The pandemic also really eroded the income source of many people. So access to financial services, but also financial literacy becomes important for people to have devices and to use those devices. But also rules and regulations also are very important. When we say rules and regulations, you have, I mean, digitalization is not just an economic and technical issue. It's also a human right issue. You have the issue of privacy, biases. As I said, artificial intelligence doesn't have anything to do with excluded groups, women and men. No. Petrica was saying, earlier that a person with the name Muhammad might be excluded, during job interviews. People who live in certain geographical areas are also targeted and excluded. So it's also a policy issue. But when we say also policy issues, I think we need also to talk about informal values and then norms. For example, women who are working from home online, there is data that shows that they are being bullied, they are being excluded online. How can we ensure that they have a safe a digital environment to use digital services to access and then work from home, self-employment, people who live in rural areas who cannot come to urban centers to work from home. So we need to look at what is happening in this supply and demand interaction in the service, but also the support system, both policies, formal policies, and then informal norms and values. These are at the heart of making the digital divide a little bit narrower to fill the gap. So that's where I think we can make the accelerated innovation and then accelerated digitalization really inclusive and then sustainable. So let me stop here and then invite my colleague Sabin to add.
Thank you very much, Zenebe. And I think Sabin, if you can mention something that Zenebe kind of briefly touched upon. I think the artificial intelligence is really seen as a major enabler, right? Everybody's very excited about having this and promoting it. It's going to make our lives way easier. But there are a number of challenges, and there's a number of things that people have mentioned. And from a Roma perspective, I can see that as a threat. I was wondering if you can actually raise some of the points that you think are relevant from a migrant. I know you've been working on this, as well as from people coming from different backgrounds, because this probably is going to be a technology that will very much change the way we see life.
Yeah, thank you. Today humans do most of the work. And of course, machines learn to carry out tasks we could hardly imagine 20 years ago, and they will increasingly do so. And the problem with AI maybe isn't its importance and acceleration, but our lack to prepare systems to respond to the change. So in other words, the public discourse over the effects of artificial intelligence has mostly been about fear and that it will exceed human intelligence and getting out of hand by replacing humans in every aspect of life. So AI is no longer a thing of science fiction, and it exists in the world all around us. So global challenges such as the pandemic are offering opportunities for accelerating the role of artificial intelligence. Like private sector enterprises are struggling to avoid workplace infections of COVID-19 and to keep operating costs low, like in warehouses, call centers, and other sectors. And today's AI can interpret heaps of data for us, drive a car, translate and interpret, recommend songs, and beat us in intricate games like chess, for example. However, these forms of AI are considered to be narrow, and they are embedded in our GPS systems and Amazon recommendations as well. So they are also designed to perform repetitive tasks. Many researchers are seeking to develop strong artificial intelligence. And the new technological revolution will not only replace humans in routine tasks that can be easily replicated by machines, but will facilitate the automation of complex tasks. And machines are already managing the routine while humans are still taking care of the unpredictable. Once a strong AI arrives, it may begin taking jobs away from people. So here we are talking about millions of jobs. Low-paying jobs like driving taxis or restaurant services may disappear. This is especially important in Eastern Europe and the Western Balkans, where more than half of the cities are facing population decline. In one possible scenario, it will create staggering inequalities within societies, affecting the vulnerable like women, the youth, the other ethnic minorities, by eliminating functions that can decide to help them up the social ladder.
So what can we do to actually respond to some of these challenges? What should we actually do now, today, when this is a threat, but not a certainty? Anyone can comment?
So, yeah.
Turkey,
and then...
Well, just an interesting idea came to me that we actually from the digital the digital company or software development companies should not speak in this language that the innovation and the development of technology could be a threat to some of the community, some of the businesses, because innovation can only improve our lives. There are technologies and there are businesses who actually get improved when the technology is deleting them. Like, for example, does anyone is bothering that there is no more smith lockers or this blacksmiths? Because everybody is actually the production of iron, the production of iron things is already in robotics. Like, does anyone argues that the cars for horses are not made by hand and that they are replaced by robots? We people are smart enough to outsmart the computers. So the computers, the software, the intelligence that we are developing it's only to improve the lives and to make our life easier so we can think on better things. Like, nobody cares if there is no shoe cleaners in the road because some machines has replaced the shoe cleaning in every hotel lobby. So we should take care how to get people involved in the development of technology. How can we bring more people to use technology and not to get afraid that their job will be taken by a robot? If his job is taken by a robot, then he needs to find something that is better and it's more useful to the world.
Let me challenge.
So I believe that is the discussion that we should do.
Right. Let me challenge you guys a bit. So we are in 2020. A lot of kids who are anyway probably not the top of the class because of their economic background and because of the challenges have actually lost probably 1 year of school, right? So because the school moved online, many of them actually did not have the devices, so they lost this gap. So how do you actually keep these kids? Let's assume there's a small Petrica in a village in Romania who's 10 now, right? So in 10 years, he's going to be on the market, right? How is he going to be competitive? And what can we actually do today to actually help him close that gap that was lost? Andy, maybe you want to.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in by challenging you actually, because imagine COVID would have happened 10 years ago, and people would be locked out. Children would be locked out of schools, right? Uh, an entire generation of children would not have access to education for a year, right? So, to Ferki's point, yeah, technology has enabled actually
But let me
the
check.
continuous. No, I'll get to the other point. So, just right now, fair enough. That's where we have the people who don't have access to that layer, right? So my point is, so challenge me back, please.
Because if it was 10 years ago, the rich kids would not have gone to school either, so it was a level playing field. In this case, the rich kids, like mine, for example, had 2 computers, but the others, which are living in Romania, did not. So there's a growing gap because of technology.
Yeah, I'll give you the example where I see. So my wife is from rural Romania, from central Romania, and it's a village quite remote, and we know a lot of very common threads across Eastern Europe, right? Most of the young people are working abroad, the old, and then the children who are left being taken care of by their grandparents. In that community, like literally, it was not an issue of having a computer. Most people like put in the effort, whether it's their parents sent them the tablets, or even in some cases actually, like there were some government programs that did enable. What this actually did was most of these kids now are properly computer literate, and they're no longer not only computer literate to use YouTube or whatever, but they're actually computer literate to use a online conferencing tool. They're computer literate to use a Word, a Microsoft suite of products, or G Suite, or whatever. They become literate in productivity for computers rather than just entertainment. So I do see that as a huge opportunity. Now, what can we do to answer your initial question to bridge? It's always down to education. If you actually look, and whether it's the World Economic Forum or McKinsey or the large consultants, their numbers do say their jobs or net jobs that will not be lost will actually be created by automation or by the digitalization, but it's a different type of jobs. So Ferki is right. We have to give people access to the new type of education. And just like in Romania was 20 years ago, Romania had a quantum leap, right? A giant leap, because from having no infrastructure, it went to having one of the fastest broadband. Because of disruption, it could leap some stages. I think because education is changing and most education has actually lagged, now it might be an opportunity actually, even for some of these children, to jump directly to the next stage of education and don't have to go through the quote unquote the drama or the steps the rich kid with the 2 computers has to go through.
Yeah, very good point, Andy. I like this. I like this last part. It gives me hope. Zenebe, please comment on this.
Yes. You see, I think we need to be very honest. Now we are just bashing, COVID, as if COVID was the major source of the crisis in the digital divide or in education underperformance. Before COVID, I think in many countries the different education systems were underfunded and they were underperforming. So now with COVID and with this all digital divide, things are a little bit worsening. So that's why I go back to my point. It's not just supply and demand. We need to look at what is happening around. You have skills development where you can't also provide everything online. For example, vocational skills training, people have to be in a lab. They have to learn. So as much as blended learning can be transferred online, there are some skills that you have to offer in person. That's I think one important point that we need to take into account. The other point is, as I said also, always we point our fingers at governments, but for us in Helvetas, we see inclusive and sustainable development as a multi-stakeholder initiative. It's an initiative between public, private, and civil society. I think that's where our role should be, to facilitate and bring these actors together to find solutions for major and critical problems like underperforming education, the digital divide, and what you have. But there also, I mean, we talk about policy environment to really create conducive environment for private sector enterprises to invest, but also private sector to abide by some laws. As I mentioned, the digital divide is not just about technology; it's also about governance issue. It's about human right issue. So I think we need also to bring those critical problems by using the crisis as an opportunity to talk about, but also to bring the different stakeholders together, to facilitate and find solutions. So I would like most of us to not to forget these bigger picture problems. At the end, this will be, I think, the solution for addressing some of the problems. And Helvetas, as a civil society organization, tries to play, following the key principles I just mentioned.
Thank you, Zenebe. We have Ferki who needs to leave now, so we'll give him the word. Ferki, I already want to thank you for your contribution, and then after we'll have Sabin.
Yeah, thank you, Petrica. Just before I leave, I have to mention, because Redi is organizing this conference, and thank you for the participation. We have to take into account the Roma part in all these discussions that we are having. We as a businessman can develop a lot of tools how to improve life and how to make businesses easy. But Roma community is one of the community that is affected because of lack of access to technology or a little bit of digital illiteracy and etc. But I believe Redi and civil society can push to the government to bridge that gap. And I believe that this is one of the best activities that you could do in the future to bring all these things that we as a company, as a private companies are developing to be more accessible to people who have need of this. Roma community, as all the time I say, they are like naturally entrepreneurs. They always do something related to business. They try to make money using the situation that they are living in. And if we can give them the tools of digitalization, the tools of technology, I believe it will be easier for them and for the society. And I'm very grateful for Redi and all that the work they are doing to get on board all these small, medium, and big businesses to get involved and help each other. And I believe that if we have all these tools that are in the market and the private companies are producing, because we as a private company cannot make something that is more suitable to Roma, non-Roma, Indians, Americans, Vietnamese. We're doing a program that is suitable for everybody. But you as a community leader, as a civil organization, can pressure the government to create infrastructure and opportunity for all these Roma kids who will be able to learning about this technology, to improve the people who are working on the markets to start to be able to process card payments, to know how to open an e-shop, to know how to start selling on the internet, and that will broaden their market, that will increase their profits, and they will be able also to buy a tablet for their children to follow online school. So thank you for this opportunity. I believe we have more opportunity to speak and meet each other. And I'm sorry I have to leave you, but thank you for everything, Petrica and all the rest.
I really appreciate it, Ferki. Thank you very much for this point. Sabin, I think you wanted to mention something after Zenebe brought the point.
Thank you very much. Actually, just to add up what Zenebe said, actually, one area that is, so I would like to add, one area that is promising is new solutions for education that could bring much needed innovation. This could be a catalyst for education institutions in Eastern Europe, South Caucasus, and the Western Balkans to search for innovative solutions in a relatively short time, in particular for sectors like ICT, where the lack of or mismatch of skills is a serious one. So the convergence of both rapidly evolving technologies and the pandemic has led to rapid shifts in the labor market. So the key to preparing young job seekers out there for the digital future of work is a transformation of education and training. And one more thing, as it stands today, most actors in the labor market are using an education system that was designed to grow and equip a workforce for the industrial age. Unfortunately, we are no longer in the industrial age. The old education system placed a lot of emphasis on routine and specialized knowledge. However, this won't work in the digital future. So supporting this transition will be the transformation of work, the key enabler of which we are both new technologies and the pandemic crisis. We have all now reached the front of the line. It's time to cast aside the trappings of the industrial age and boldly imagine our new future in the post-pandemic world, one that looks very different than the world we left behind. So reimagining the future of work in the post-pandemic world is a little bit scary. It may look like that, but I think it's also thrilling as we brace ourselves for what we know is going to be a bumpy but amazing ride.
Fantastic. So this almost 1 hour has been extremely exciting. I think the conversation has been very, very nice, but we're close now to the end of the discussion. I would like to see, what do you think we should do? And when I say we, it's probably me as Radu Executive Director. What should I do? What should I include in my strategy for the short term, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, so that we start off this process of bringing both Roma entrepreneurs and the younger people who are considering setting up their businesses into this very fast-paced industry. So, Andy, if you have maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I think that would be great.
All right. So I think I think Ferki brought it up, and it's a very good point. So I think Reddy's role is quite significant and can be significant. I'll stay with my technology hat in here. And one of the tenets that we actually have when we talk about automation is, if it can be automated, it will be. And this, when I look at, because I'm involved a lot in the entrepreneurship startup scene, right? Always my advice is, don't reinvent the wheel. Focus on your own value added when you build your business or whatever. Try everything else, to whether it's automated or to pick something that somebody's else built before. Really focus your energy on your own value added. So what should Reddit do? Whenever, like, all the entrepreneurs that we work with, right, that you guys see, send this message, right? Automation should be a priority, and not to say don't do it automated. Automation allows you to really be yourself and be your creative self, right? Focus on the future of education rather than be captured in the industrial age education. Like, that's the point. So have that sort of a guiding light, or some sort of compass, right? Where everything you do, try, can this be automated? Should I be focusing on this? Because if you start focusing on how to invoice your business, you're not gonna focus on how to create value-added products, right? So keep that as a tenet. And yeah, there's technologies that will support this, whether it's how to manage invoices or anything, but that as a mindset shift.
Very good. Thank you very much, Andy. That's very empowering and motivating. Zenebe, what do you think? What do you think I should tell my board in January that we should start doing in 2021?
You see, the challenge for me is the lack of attention to an opportunity or a crisis like the pandemic in a more systematic way with a medium and long-term perspective. So we need to look at, once again, what are the key constraints, what are the most important opportunities, and for that I think we need to do more analysis. It's not just one-off. To better understand, what are the key constraints, rather than trying to address symptoms. That's where we waste a lot of resources. So that's the first one. So what are the key priorities for you, and then why systems are really underperforming? Do we have a better understanding? So for me, that's the first one. The second one is, if you come up with a solution, then rather than doing it by ourselves, why don't we bring system actors, and then to really understand their capacities and incentives, why they are not doing it, what is holding them back? I think that's part of a better understanding of underperforming or absent systems. Yeah? The last point is, you see, we do a lot of things, we invest a lot of resources, but do we really know what works, what doesn't work, and why? Do we really have, the evidence to make, our cases really evidence informed? Because that can be used, to incentivize communities, to demonstrate to them, to use it as evidence informed advocacy towards governments, rather than criticizing governments, they're not moving. So I think understanding also what works, what doesn't work. There is a lot of information overflow, wrong data, or we just collect, every data which we cannot use. So I think to have a system that will really enable us to know what works, what doesn't work, will be also very critical. I'm just sharing you from our institutional learning also, as we move forward in terms of navigating, the complexities, and then accelerated, kind of digitalization, transformation brought by crisis like the pandemic.
Thank you very much for this very, very powerful message, Zenebe. And I fully agree that we tend to start new programs before properly evaluating what we've done in the past, and before really putting in the energy in understanding and being very critical with our own work. I think this is indeed a very important step that many of us are missing, because it's always much more appealing to start something new rather than to actually sit down and reflect on what has happened. Very good. So Sabin, I don't know if you still want to have a closing message.
I think Zenebe actually wrapped up pretty well, so it's good from my side.
So, Petrica, if I may add quickly to the point of, and you're familiar with it. So in my previous company, we actually did a project with the OSA, with the Open Society Archives, to actually look at their whole database of projects across 20 years to get learnings from them and to actually understand. So technology can really help with that as well. So.
Right,
Yeah.
and to be honest, we from time to time we actually mention about the project that you implemented with the Open Society Foundation's archives. I really do believe that technology is a great enabler for progress. It's a great enabler to increase the value added in the products. The challenge that I believe we need to kind of overcome is, how do we make sure that we bring in as many people on board as possible, using trainings, using facilitation, using mentoring and coaching to use these new tools, and to make people understand that technology is not the enemy or a monster, but it's actually there to help them. So I fully agree. On this note, I would really, really want to thank all of you for joining, as well as the more than 700 people that are watching us. It has been actually one of the most viewed sessions in the Ready Summit. We'll probably have more than 10 or 20,000 people are going to watch this. We're also going to make a smaller bite-sized video out of it, and I'm really looking forward to continue this conversation with all of you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Petrica, for organizing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great meeting you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.